Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas. Today I have with me Aaron Wright, Director of Strategy at Earnix. Aaron, thank you for joining me today. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, my pleasure. I was telling you before we started recording today, I am in Calgary, Canada. I've been here for the Amplify Broker Tech Fest conference, which is the largest InsurTech conference in Canada, second year that I'm here, and it is just a fantastic conference. According to LinkedIn, you are in Utah. So assuming you're home right now, and we are recording on September 17th. So I'm assuming a beautiful fall in Utah, not yet cold.
It's not yet cold. It's starting to get there. So the picture I have in my background is actually the picture I see from my backyard. So of the valley that I can see if I look out my window. And the mountains that are just on the other side of where the camera would be here today got their first snowfall. So we had a little bit of rain, saw some snow at the top of the mountains. So now's the time to set up your ski trips, I think.
In September, is that early?
It was a bit early, but it's beautiful to see. I think it's mostly melted by now, but oh, so beautiful.
Yeah, Utah's such a beautiful area. I never visited until last year. I got to go to InsurTech Utah and spent a couple of days in Salt Lake. Haven't explored beyond that, but quite like it's just a beautiful area. So yeah, highly recommended to anybody who hasn't had the chance. So Aaron, we always give the chance to give the elevator pitch. What is Earnix?
What a question. Okay, so Earnix in a nutshell, my own words, it's something that allows underwriters, actuaries, product managers, the business of an insurance company to utilize the data they have correctly, to leverage analytics and AI, simulate and forecast the results of decisions they'd make, allowing them to really make the best decisions possible they could, and then putting the power into the hands of those business users to actually take those decisions and put them into production without waiting for IT to do it for them. We have two main pieces of software. We've got one that focuses on underwriting risk selection. We've got another one that focuses on pricing and rating. And we've been around, I guess, for 20 years, more than 20 years now, I guess, getting our start really in the analytics business. We've got a global presence, offices in Tel Aviv, Boston, London, Dallas, Frankfurt, Paris, and Sydney, Australia. So truly a global company. And as you saw, we've got people working out of Utah.
Okay. And I should have done a little bit of a better job in introducing you, because you are uniquely qualified to talk about both underwriting and the actuarial piece, being both a fellow CPCU, so you really understand insurance and underwriting, and an FCAS, or I believe you guys spell it out, right? Do you guys say FCAS or FCAS,
you can say FCAS, FCAS, either one, yeah.
And an FCAS,
both an underwriter and actuary.
Which is the highest level, right, a fellow of the Casualty Actuarial Society.
Yep.
Perfect.
Exactly. And I started off in the actuarial space, and got involved in pricing, and then went over to reinsurance and things like that. Worked a lot more with underwriters and really got to have some good friends. And they said, you should look into your CPCU. And so once I started being promoted into different leaderships, I had other underwriters on my team, and I said, it's only fair. I need to go back, get back to school. So worked on that, and I will say that it's some good education. I think people with a CPCU understand insurance in a way that you can't without that type of education.
Thank you. I'm not an actuary by any stretch, but yes, CPCU is a fantastic way to understand the business side of what we do. It won't make you an expert on the numbers, but it will make you an expert on how insurance works, the coverages, and how all the pieces tie together, help you grow your career. a lot faster too. You mentioned in the description of Earnix, so leverage analytics and AI to forecast results, to make better decisions, to make the best decisions you can without waiting for IT.
Mhm.
So tell me about that. How does it help us improve our decisions without having to go through IT for to make this happen?
Yeah, well, so and that was probably one of the biggest frustrations I had in my career as I was looking at how I can adjust all the things that were going on around me. I mean, we've just been through, a huge economic shift, right? And we had some really smart people at different insurance companies that knew what they wanted to do and wanted to put those in place. And they were still getting in that line with IT, waiting for IT money to actually make changes, whether it's with acceptability guidelines or pricing changes they wanted to do. Earnix makes that go away. So, as I said, Earnix started out in more of the analytics space, but now we have more end to end, right? Everything from bringing in the right data, doing the right analytics, simulating that thing, and then getting it out into production. So we put the right governance and controls around it so that the business itself. So as a portfolio underwriter or as a pricing actuary, I can sit down and take what I programmed in Earnix and simulated and looked at and said, yes, this is exactly what I want. I can lock that thing down, run it through all the governance and IT tests, push a button as soon as I have UI approval if I need it, and get it out into production without needing to have IT come in and reprogram everything and having to hand it off to them or use Excel as a intermediary or something like that. It makes it so the business actually has the power again.
This actually has the power again. That is uh, fantastic. Or right. So the industry has seen lots of challenges with losses, carriers pulling out of states or significantly reducing how much they're willing to write in some of the more challenging states. Uh, Inflation, uh, climate events, and technology changing radically. And so we've had a lot of stuff making it really hard. Uh, what are the biggest challenges that you're expecting underwriters will see in the coming year or two?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably the biggest one that I think we're starting to see now, but we're going to see even more of it, has to do with just the impact of the shifting economy we've had. If you look back a year or two, insurance companies right now are just digging themselves out of this profit hole, if you will, right? That was caused by inflation and all sorts of other things that were around it. We're actually starting to see right now reports coming in, right, of companies that are starting to make profit. Now, how do they get profitable? Well, drastic changes to their underwriting guidelines, to their premium increases, things like that. But now that they're actually starting to see some profitability, you know what the next thing is, right? I mean, this is always what the cycle is doing. They're going to go to us underwriters and they're going to say, we want to grow the business. Now, don't sacrifice profitability, but grow the
Yeah.
business. Now that we're profitable, we need more people, right?
Uh,
So I think that's going to be probably the biggest thing that we're going to face coming up. And we're probably already starting to hear it now from our leaders that we need to grow. Um, so that's the first one. I'd say probably another big one. You mentioned technology. AI is out there, and you know, AI it's kind of this thing that you hear people talk about, and you think, is this a good thing? This is a bad thing. I think, and probably the most recent one, I asked my kids the other day, do you know anything about AI? And they're like, oh, you mean Chat GPT? So Gen AI, right? These Chat GPT large language models are out there, and they're starting to become a lot more common. Um, we as underwriters have to look for ways to be able to use AI in what we're doing, not just the chat GPTs of the world, but actually find ways to actually use AI to make us more efficient, more effective, and not just be afraid of it, right? But actually leverage that thing so that we're able to bolster our careers, re-educating ourselves to own the improvements that can come through things like AI.
Okay. Uh, with all the changes, how can underwriters build resiliency in the face of inflation, rising costs?
Yeah, I think it comes down to agility, analytics, and collaboration. So agility, because we have to be able to make changes quickly. We have to be able to keep up with the changing environment. I mean, we talked earlier, right? Technology is changing, economy is changing, processes at our company, risk appetites, all sorts of things are changing behind the scenes. We have to be able to not only know what we need to change, but change it quickly. Analytics, because we have to know what we want to change, right? It's one thing to get out there and say, I think this is the right path you should go down. But it's another thing to be able to say, I've got analytics and I can simulate the impacts of this. And I can say, if I make this change, here's what I expect to happen. That gives us credibility. That gives us, we can make the best decisions possible. And then with that agility, we can actually put it in place, see how it works. The last thing I said was collaboration, right? Agility, analytics, and collaboration. Collaboration is all about the fact that our underwriting decisions cannot be made in a vacuum. We have to work with our pricing folks. We have to work with our marketing folks. We have to work with our product and our product management folks to fully understand what these changes are and actually get them into production and do it in a way so that we understand holistically what we're doing to the policyholder and not just a little bit here, a little bit there, or even work against ourselves. So collaboration has to be there for underwriters.
Yeah, and collaboration is tough without the right tool. And if we're not speaking the same language with the same one version of the truth, so this transformation that the industry is experiencing when it comes to our systems is absolutely necessary to truly be able to collaborate.
Yeah, so a quick story. So, and some of you may have heard me tell this story before. And Tony, you may have even heard me when I've spoken with you previously. But there was a time where I remember being in a senior leader meeting at a company I worked at, and the results were not great. And so the president of the company turns and looks at the chief actuary and the chief underwriter and says, "Fix it." So they both run off to do their own things. And then months later, right, this big ship has actually turned too far. And it's because, the actuaries pulled every lever they had available to them. The underwriters did the same. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, 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 too much, right? And that's the type of thing we have to avoid. I mean, actuaries making changes on prices, underwriters making changes on acceptability guidelines and other things, they all affect the same policyholders. So we got to work together. It's another story on that. So I remember opening up some underwriting guidelines and seeing no results. And we found out that marketing actually made a change that they weren't even marketing to that segment anymore because they thought, well, we're not even writing it, so why market there? And we had, opened up the gates and said, yep, let's write this segment. We think we can be profitable, but we hadn't communicated it. And so, we have to collaborate.
Right. In my world, where I record a podcast episode about InsurTech several times a week, it seems that all I hear about is AI, and it's very hard to figure out who's for real, who's not. But how do you foresee that machine learning and kind of like the more traditional side of AI and now Gen AI, how will those two things enable greater accuracy and efficiency for underwriting?
All right, so let me start off with my definition of AI, because I am one. I remember when I was sitting in these meetings with a bunch of my peers, other executives, listening to vendors, right? And I'd have somebody come in, either a consultant or a vendor, and they'd be, the sales guy would be throwing out AI, just waiting for us, to go weak in the knees and start throwing money at them, right? But half the time they have no idea what they're talking about. So I'll tell you my definition, right? So my definition of AI is utilizing computers to do tasks such as learning, problem solving, decision making that have historically been done manually by people. So it's kind of the codifying these decision making. I heard somebody describe it once as the democratization of machine learning, which I love, right? Because machine learning is one way that we can actually use these predictive models to actually figure out what decisions we should be made. But holistically, AI is just taking things that we've had to do manually and being able to take those decisions and put them in a framework so that computers can actually do that for us. They can assist us taking away some of that stuff that we really shouldn't be using our time for every day to make those happen. It's said that AI is really good at patterns. Well, our brains are just as good at patterns, right? But there are times where these models that power AI are actually going to find things that aren't obvious to us. And that's good. We should be using those things. We do have to remember, though, that underwriters and their brains are going to be able to do things through intuition that a model is not going to be able to do. So we have to put the two together. We got to take the things that are, I'd say, able to be codified into decision making for computers, take those off our plates so that we can actually take our most powerful tool, our brains, and do the complex tasks that computers are not going to be able to handle. Those edge cases, the unique problems, the things that there's not enough data behind it for a computer to be able to figure it out, yet our brains, we can figure those out. That's where we should be focusing our time. So accuracy, efficiency, it comes from taking the things off our plates, still being involved in building what those things are out there, but taking the repetitive tasks off our plates and focusing on the complex stuff.
Okay. And as a former underwriter, and I wasn't underwriting that long ago, we're talking 6-7 years ago, so it was in the modern era, so to speak. I spent plenty of time on repeatable tasks, and that's much less than my UA spent, and the processing people spent. They truly spent a ton of time on non-value added tasks. So the more that we can eliminate that, absolutely the better. As we're going through this underwriting transformation driven by AI, will it actually deliver a competitive advantage and help us differentiate in the market? What might that look like?
Well, so I think it will, because, well, and if you think of a perfect system, perfect insurance system, right? With perfect data that every company has, which none of us actually have, right? There's no perfect data. But if we did, then we would all have the same loss cost estimate for every risk. And in that world, we'd be competing based on the most efficient carrier, most efficient company that's out there with the lowest expense ratio. Well, even without having that perfect world, our expense ratios are going to determine whether we're playing with a, I'll say, built-in advantage or built-in disadvantage. So having something with the efficiency of AI to actually take some of the stuff off our plate that that's going to reduce our costs overall and make us compete even better. Um, I'd also say innovation is a big part of it as far as that competitive advantage we can get. If we're so, I ran an innovation team for a while for a company that I worked for, and I can't tell you how many good ideas we had sitting on the shelf that we did the CBA afterwards, and we said, wow, this could really make us money, save us money. Yet the cost to actually implement this thing is way too high. And so all of a sudden, we've got good stuff sitting on the shelf. So we were being, I'll say, almost weighed down by legacy technology that was out there. So I'm sure we weren't the only company that had that happen. So one goal of kind of a modernization and using underwriting transformation is to make it so that we're future-proofing ourselves for both the good stuff we have sitting on the shelf, but then what are the good ideas that are come out tomorrow that we're not going to know anything about today? Right. So we got to have those in place, the technology, the backbone, so that we can be agile, make these changes, be efficient, and actually implement the new innovation as it comes out.
Yeah, the mandatory Gen AI question.
Uh-oh.
So now that we have Gen AI, how are you seeing it leveraged by underwriting, and what are we looking at next when it comes to Gen AI and underwriting?
Yeah, Gen AI. Now, I will say I'm not the expert on Gen AI. I do love using it. I mean, the fact that I can not have to take detailed notes of every meeting and actually have Gen AI actually produce a list of tasks afterwards for me to do, I love that thing. That's amazing. As far as underwriting goes and really putting that in the underwriting process, imagine being able to use a chatbot to automate, the underwriting process by gathering information from our customers, maybe even analyzing the data behind the scenes and making recommendations directly to the underwriter. I mean, that can save us time, that can reduce errors in collection, and make it so that we're those repeatable tasks we talked about before can be off our plate. I received an email the other day from a car dealership that's close to me. It's actually the one that I bought a car from, a couple years ago. The email itself actually said that it was generated by AI. Customer service, right? This was an email from a car dealership that said, "Hey, we know things about you." It didn't say this specifically, right? But hey, we know this about you. We know that you like these type of vehicles. We've got this one. We know how much you actually owe on your last vehicle. We think that you should come in and buy this new car. Now, I didn't go buy a new car, but that's the type of email or phone call I used to get from somebody at the dealership. Well, now they can just have AI produce that same thing for us. So when we're talking about customer service and kind of exceeding those customer expectations, when done right, Gen AI, I think, can make it so that those emails we have to send out to our policyholders about different things can be done in a way that's not creepy, but actually not making an underwriter sit down and have to type out each and every one of those emails or letters hand by hand. So I think that there's some uses in there, not just the back office stuff, but really customer service and streamlining that underwriting process.
Are we still gonna need the human touch within underwriting, or will the human side of underwriting be relegated to taking the broker out to the baseball game whenever I do go out and visit the brokers?
Now, baseball games are fun, so I definitely hope AI doesn't take that one from us. But yes, we're definitely gonna need it. I mentioned this before, but there are lots of things out there, complex decisions that are not going to fit into an easy bucket for AI to be able to actually predict for us. Those areas that we're not going to have enough data for a predetermined algorithm that a computer can take care of, those are the cases where an underwriter needs to exercise judgment, make decisions based on the knowledge of the industry itself, years of experience, and really taking into consideration the risk tolerance of the company at the time. Underwriters are still going to be needed for that human touch in areas that involve judgment, involve intuition, and empathy, right? That those things cannot be replicated by algorithms alone.
What new data sources should we be using in the underwriting process for our changing risks?
What new data? Well, so there is a lot of data at an insurance company, right? And there's always a clamor from leadership to find new data and find new ways to use it. I'm going to be a bit provocative with this one and say, I think that the best new data with intentional air quotes around it is really going to be a data source that we should already have, but maybe don't, which is performance data on our own underwriting risk selection rules. I don't know how many different insurance companies I've spoken with that have thousands of rules out there, put in some sort of a rules engine, sometimes 4 or 5 other rules engines. And you ask them, how is this rule performing? No clue, right? How is your set of rules working together to make this the case? Well, I knew it made this decision, but I'm not sure which rules triggered to actually have that come true, right? Well, we should have data on all of that so that we're able to go through and say what's working, what's not working. If I made changes to my system of rules, what would that actually do? And if new opportunities are coming out and I want to add new rules in there, how can I do that efficiently, right? How am I sure that I'm putting something in there that's not conflicting with something that I already have in my set of rules today? So yes, there's some cool new data out there, but I think we also need to be aware of what we're doing today and performance data on that to make it better, and not just looking outside to see what the new stuff is.
Okay. So I'm always curious on the origin story. And in your case, I 20-year veteran of a fantastic carrier of USAA. Looks like always kind of a actuarial pricing modernization side. When you do decide to join an insurtech or a vendor, there's a few thousand options, right? And with your experience at USAA, CPCU, and FCAS, you probably had choices. Why did you choose Earnix? What was it about the Earnix platform that made it the winner for it?
Yeah, so when I decided that 20 years at one carrier was enough, and to see what else was out there in the world, I was honestly not thinking at all about the insurtech world. I said I'm an insurance guy. I work for insurance companies. That's what I do. I was actually interviewing at quite a few national brands for different executive jobs there. Now, I had gotten to know Earnix a bit when I was at USA because of I was in a role that put me in a place where I was looking to modernize the way that we were doing business, both for the underwriting area and for the pricing area. And so I got to know them a bit. I got to know some of the people there. And I guess when they heard that I had decided to look somewhere else, they approached me and said, "You're going to come work here." And my boss, my current boss, Drawer, said, "You're going to come work here, and you're going to love it." And I said, "Drawer, you're great. I love you, but no, I work for insurance companies." He said, "We'll make it worth your while, and I'll tell you why." And so he convinced me. And the reason I finally decided to not go with an insurance company, but go to an insurtech, is I really started talking to them about what it was that we could do to change not just one company, but change the way that the whole industry works. The idea of being able to, as somebody who's been in a position where I'm putting underwriting rules in place, I'm putting pricing changes in place, and be able to say, I can do it better and I can do it more efficiently, and I'm not having to wait for IT. That's a change. That's a fundamental change in the process that we as professionals would go through, and it's been worth it. I'll tell you, I worked for two big carriers before this. I worked for Farmers Insurance, then I worked for USA, and I loved it both. Um, but in the almost 3 years that I've been at Earnix, I've been able to talk to hundreds of executives from all sorts of carriers, both in North America and globally, and it's opened my eyes to what's out there and how things are being done. And I feel like I'm actually making an impact, not just with one carrier, but across the board. So it's pretty sweet.
Coming from a large carrier, it's very easy to get lost in the improvement of this one carrier and not really see what's going on outside. It is super interesting to go from that to serving the wider spectrum of carriers. On the career advice side, what advice do you have for traditional insurance people like you and I, who want to go to the insurtech side? It's definitely like what I do is I recruit people to go to insurtech for the most part. I do recruit for carriers and brokers also, but a lot of recruiting people to traditional insurance people to go to insurtech. What recommendations do you have for them to be successful once they get to the insurtech side?
Yeah, the first thing you got to do is you got to make sure you know your job well, right? Because the job you're doing as an underwriter, the job you're doing as an actuary, your insurance job, you have to be able to not only know what you're talking about, because if you go to an insurtech, you're not with a team of 25, 50 people that are all doing the same thing. You have to really know what you're doing so that you can stand on your own. And then second, you have to be able to explain what it is that you're doing, right? It's not good enough to just be able to do the math or make a decision. You have to be able to explain it to somebody. And so that communication skill, yes, it's good for your job at an insurance company as well, right? It'll serve you no matter where you are. But when you move to an insurtech, you're going to be working with development teams and salespeople, professional service people, some of which come from an insurance background and some of which don't. And you need to be there to help them understand, connect what they're doing to what the needs of the insurance consumers really are. And this, I would say this comes up more and more because as companies, insurtechs keep looking to push in the space, they're always looking for more ways to serve the customers they have. And it's easy to go the wrong direction, which is why I've been having so much fun with strategy, right? Because for strategy, I can sit there and push and say, let's make sure we've got the voice of the customer. Here's what an insurance company and professionals, here's what underwriters actually need. And get that software instead of putting stuff out there that maybe might not be as useful.
Awesome. Aaron, thank you very much for your time. It's been interesting. It's been fun. It's always good to chat with fellow CPCUs and to chat with people who have gone insurtech and loved it. Thank you for telling us about Earnix and your idea of where things are going in the future. When this goes live, I will tag you on LinkedIn and tag the company on LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
It's been great talking with you. Thank you so much for having me on.